Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our budgeting webinar. This webinar is a partnership between Rural Action and Women Grow Ohio, hosted by the Appalachian Center for Economic Networks with funding from the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program. Today, Annie Warmke and Chore Starr will be discussing budgeting techniques for women farmers and how to make a profit on your farm.
Good afternoon.
Hey there.
Hey. Well, we're finally getting started after some technical difficulties, but we're here and we're going to make it work.
That's right. Yes.
All right.
Good. So why don't you say something about who you are, and I can say something about who I am, why we're sitting here today.
I'm Chore Starr with Cherokee Valley Bison Ranch, and I'm here because I've developed some work about budgeting, and I want to help you be able to budget too.
Okay, that's good. And I'm Annie Warmke from Blue Rock Station, and I am also with Women Grow Ohio. And I'm here to be the interviewer and add my 2 cents or a nickel's worth to what it's like to run a farm business and figure out how to make a living. So let's get started.
Let's get started. Okay, so we're going to talk about calculating your costs and an easy way to do that, and also offer some time budgeting tips because, yeah, time is really important. Okay, so I like a little bit of humor.
No, you like a lot of humor.
Okay, I like a lot of humor. So the first step to good budgeting is good record keeping.
So tell me why that's true, because, you know, everybody says that, but we don't all do it. So why do you think that's true?
Well, if you don't write it down. So back when I was a safety coordinator, I took all these classes, and the number one thing that I took away was what gets measured gets done. So this is a way of measuring how you're doing. You know, you're measuring what you're spending, you're measuring what you're bringing in, so that you can tell at the end of the year whether or not you're actually successful.
Well, and of course, some people think success is this bumper sticker I saw one time that said, "What? I can't be out of money. I still have checks." And I think that's how a lot of people run their business, isn't it?
Right. I have lots of checks.
Yeah. So no plan. You don't know where you're coming from. You don't know where you've been, and you probably aren't making a living.
Right. So this is a good way to track that and help figure out whether you are or not. And then you have it broken down by categories, so you know exactly where improvements can be made.
And so do I have to carry around receipts in my pocket and write down every single thing, or are there ways like with credit cards and things like that?
Yeah, you can use your credit card statements. I am old school and I keep all my receipts on my desk until I enter them in my spreadsheet, and then once they're entered in the spreadsheet, then I file them away by each month. That way when I go to visit the accountant at the end of the year, it's all nice and organized, and I just send her or bring her a copy of my spreadsheet, and she takes it from there.
Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds simple enough. It's about follow through, isn't it?
It is.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
I have no accounting brain, so I just shove all the receipts in my wallet, and then I go up to Jay's office and I put them in the box, and then everything pretty much is on credit card. So then he'll say, well, wait a minute, on this one credit card, because we have different credit cards for like the farm and then personal use. So it says something or other, and you know how a lot of times it's not really it doesn't say Tractor Supply, it says some goofy name. So then I have to go back and look at my calendar, and I've gotten better at writing down on it.
Yeah.
What it is, so.
Yeah. I still roll old school and write checks for something.
Well, we do too. But one thing I will say that I think is important about this too is that a lot of times, at least in on our farm business, that we make money from being good at tracking expenses and knowing what's tax deductible
Exactly.
and what isn't. Which reminds me, we're not here giving tax advice, right?
That's right.
What should we do if we need tax advice?
Talk to your accountant.
Okay, way to go. That's what we're gonna do.
That's the right answer.
But I do think it's really important to recognize that one way you can really shelter a lot of things is by understanding what's tax deductible and how to keep those receipts and track it. And if you don't want to spend money or can't spend money on an accountant. There are a lot of good programs out there. What's the program you use for keeping track?
I just use the numbers program on my computer. It's essentially the same thing as Excel, or it's just a spreadsheet, and I set it all up myself and enter all the little formulas so it calculates everything. And then I have all my I have everything all tied together so that boom, at the end of the year everything's all figured out for me. And I just basically give that to the accountant. She only charges me not even $200 to do the taxes, and she files everything. And it's kind of a nice little insurance policy, because if I get audited, she'll be there.
Right.
So,
Well, we use TurboTax.
yeah, that's a good one
And
too.
ours is pretty complicated because we have 2 different LLCs. So we have to, and we actually used an attorney to know which schedules that we're supposed to use and everything. I think it would cost us more than that to get it done, but
Yeah,
most people probably have just a simple process that they can follow.
right. And because I do all the work, everything's already accounted for. She just has to take the numbers and plug it into her program, and it's done usually in less than an hour. So it works out well for me.
Right, and the categories are not complicated.
No.
Well, we're gonna talk about that next, aren't we?
Yeah.
Categories.
Yeah, so I can kind of guesstimate my expenses based on projections from experience that I had beforehand of what I'm gonna need for the year that I can put into a budget. And basically I look at last year's spreadsheet, like what we just looked at, and say, last year I spent this much on hay, I had this many animals, divide that out, and I know how much it costs per animal, and then I know how many animals I have this year and how much that's gonna cost me for next year. But we do have a spreadsheet coming up to help out with that too.
Yeah, and what if I don't have any experience? So I didn't have a budget last year, or I didn't have animals last year, or expenses, and this
We'll
is my
talk about
first.
that.
Okay, all right.
So some of the other expenses that you might want to think about putting on your budget is your mortgage, taxes, insurance, licenses. Like I have to have a license to go to the farmer's market since I'm selling meat, so that costs $250 a year. My insurance is expensive because I have bison, so I have to take all of that into account, how much electricity I use brooding chickens, things like that, any services that I might have to pay for. I have a brush hog, so I don't have to pay for that kind of stuff, but other people might have to pay someone to haul or brush hog their fields or things like that. So those are things that we need to keep track of as well, because it's not just your feed and things that are obvious, it's your other things that
Right, hidden stuff.
right that you forget to
Right.
take into
And
account.
Also vendor's license, because you've got to have a roaming.
Oh, that's my license, the
I see.
retail food establishment license. Unless you're selling things like, well, I guess if you're selling soap or things like that, some places may require you to have a vendor's license, but I don't think most farmers markets do, because it falls under ag.
I see, but I do know, like in our county, which I would assume every county in Ohio then has the same rules, that if you want to sell something, it isn't about food necessarily, you have to have a roaming, so I have to have a vendor's license for my farm, and then if I'm going to sell in remote places, I have to have one for each location. And if they come and inspect and I don't have it, I get fined.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, my license, my retail food establishment license is good for wherever I go.
Well, that's really great.
So yeah.
They don't care. They drive up in the parking lot and sell me something and they don't care.
Right.
Oh, okay. Well done.
So you also have to think about your infrastructure, like your barn and your milking equipment, a tractor, or I know that you don't have a tractor, but you have one of those little buggies.
I have a mule,
A mule.
a
right.
Kawasaki mule, better than a hired guy.
Right. So
Doesn't cuss you, shows up on time, starts up like a dream.
right. So that's part of your business. So you have to keep track of the expenses around that as well. If it needs a new tire or something like that. This year's been the year of tires for me. I've had to put a new tire on my truck. I've had to put new tires on my tractor, a couple of new tires on my tractors. My bush hog's gotten a flat tire. So yeah,
They're on a roll.
it's been a tire year. I'm tired.
All right.
You know, and then
Tons
your-
are good.
yes, fencing and your water systems and processing equipment, all of that stuff has to be accounted for, and it all has a lifetime that can be spread out, but your accountant can.
I mean, like
help you with that.
depreciated?
Depreciated, but yes, your.
You know, different things, you know, like with, if you put in a solar array or something as part of your infrastructure, there's different depreciation, and that's all where you make money on the taxes if you get it right.
That's right. So if you don't have years of budgeting and records to look back on, maybe you had hobby experience or
Like a hobby farmer kind of
like a
person.
hobby farmer, and then you want to get serious about it, so you can look at records that you have from before. You can talk with someone else who's doing what you want to do to find out, you know, what kind of expenses you can expect to have. You can use the internet to look up things.
YouTube,
YouTube, that's right, and Google knows everything.
yes, I know that, well,
Yes.
sort of.
So.
I'm gonna take it with a grain of salt
That's
most of
right,
the time.
that's right. But these are all good
Yeah,
estimates.
there's a
that
good
you
place
can
to
get.
start. But I don't think you can surpass the quality of asking other people who can become a support system. So when you start off in the wrong direction, they go, whoa, come back here.
Yes.
That's not how it works.
That's right.
Yeah, no, you can't really do better than that, I don't think.
No.
People who have experience. Kind of like when I read cookbooks and I'll say, you know, that recipe was never made by that person because they wouldn't have put it in the book because it would taste awful. So
Yes.
sometimes you see people are teaching something, but they never did it because they would, you just can tell.
Yeah.
But most of the time, people are doing a good job, so. Oh, I want to ask, you said ask your breeder. What does that mean?
So your breeder would be, you know, especially like in the goat industry, if you're buying goats from somebody, you could ask the person who you're buying your breed stock from or your goats from, of what their experiences are and how much they expect to spend on hay or grain or that kind of thing. So that's a good person to ask for. Just another, you know, asking a peer kind of thing.
The resource,
But they have a vested interest in helping you since you're buying from them.
buying stock.
Right.
So they want to get that information right.
Right.
That's a great point. Okay, worksheets and formulas. Tell us how simple it is.
Well, I know a really smart lady that helped me out with this hay budgeting worksheet. She's got lots of years in the goat industry, and so we kind of.
Okay, let's keep going now.
So you look at how many goats you have. Goats eat 4% of their body weight per day
Well, if they're non-milking,
if they're non-milking.
meaning they're not producing milk or,
Right, maybe you can tell us about this because you're the goat expert.
okay, well, you know, there are different kinds of goats. People might have meat goats, and so they have different requirements, which are not as heavy as, say, a dairy goat. So
Okay,
a non-milking dairy goat, maybe you're thinking she's gonna be in heat, or maybe she's pregnant, so that would influence the need for the 4% of their body weight. So it's always a good thing to know what an animal weighs and keep a record of that and make sure that they're consuming at least that much, at least when there's no pasture.
Okay.
And then the milking goats, they have a much higher need. The hay quality also has to be higher, like at least 17% protein. So even if it's 6%, they may not be getting enough if the quality of the hay isn't good enough. And so then you're just gonna figure out, I've got 10 goats and they're gonna eat so many pounds based on this formula, and then that tells you how many pounds. And then you're gonna ask your farmer, if you don't raise the hay yourself, you know, what's an average bale? And honestly, sometimes the bales that I get from the farmer I buy from, sometimes they give me a hernia when I pick them up, and other times I'm like, why can't they weigh this much all the time? Because I'm not going, so. But on average, that person's gonna know, and then that can give you an idea. So I think the challenge too is, you know, how do we have storage for bales and things like that? So we really do need to know how many days of hay we have. So if the weather's gonna turn, we know we've only got 5 days left based on how many bales and all that. So
Right.
it's important to have that sorted out and have it in your head pretty much all the time if you're in need of hay.
Right, so this can help you out with knowing how much you're gonna spend, but also knowing how much you need to have on hand.
Right. Well, what about round bales? Because you have bison, so you use round bales, and I don't have any experience with
Right,
that.
so
They're not
I
good for
know,
goats.
no, I know that my bison will eat about one 800 to 1,000 pound round bale per day.
Per day?
Per day.
Oh, la, la, they're
Yeah.
little piglies.
They are, but they gotta keep that big old rumen full, so,
That's right, they gotta keep it going.
yeah, they eat about 10% of their body weight per day. So if you've got a 2,000 pound bull, then, you know, it's 200 pounds of hay a day he's eating. The rest of them are, you know, in various sizes eating that.
Right. So how often do you have to haul hay for, when you're hauling those round bales, how often? You gotta
Well,
have
the time to get hay is in the summertime because that's when it's the most plentiful. So I made 27 trips with my 6 bale round bale hauler this summer, getting the hay that I need for this winter. So I have 162 round bales sitting at the house. That should hopefully get me till the end of April, barring, you know, any crazy
Blizzard.
weather. Right, when I may need to
In
put out
March.
some extra hay, yeah. So the bad time of year to be buying hay is in March when everyone else is running out of
Right.
hay. So I do try to plan ahead and have everything on hand for the bison.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because you can have all the figuring you want, but if you don't have enough and you're buying in the wrong time of the year, it sucks.
Right.
So for me, I used to just get so stressed out about it because I didn't know if I was gonna have enough hay and, but I have a guy that I bought now for several years, and I just call him, and in a couple of days he shows up and he can only haul 50 bales, and that's how many can fit into my barn
Yeah.
with the space I have. And so it's one thing you gotta stay on top of, and you gotta have the money to pay for it, because the farmer bringing it does not like to work on credit.
No.
So you
No.
better know what it's gonna cost,
Yep.
because they just keep eating even when you don't want them to. It's like,
That's
"So you
right.
guys don't wanna die?
I can't afford for you guys to eat that round bale right
Let's
now.
stop eating it,
Yeah.
go on a diet."
So yeah, and then I save time by putting out 4 bales at one time instead of just 1 bale at a time. I put multiple bales out, and that way they can all eat as much as they need to eat, because the big bulls can be hogs sometimes. And
But that's the reason it doesn't work for goats too, because
Right.
goats, first of all, round bales, they're gonna jump up on it and poop on it, and then they're not gonna eat it,
right,
and or it's gonna get all wet and they're not gonna eat it, and they waste about a third of every bale.
Yeah.
So it's gotta be I mean, each livestock species is gonna have a different need, and that's why this sheet is so important as well. This is just about goats, so people
Right.
should look up online and see what's the average for the livestock that they wanna
right.
handle.
Okay, and then this is a good one for grain. You know, if you're feeding grain to your goats, this is again a goat worksheet here. And maybe you can talk about that too, since you're the goat expert.
Okay, well, so obviously when a goat is pregnant or making milk, they have a lot higher nutritional needs. And so when it says you're gonna feed about 2 pounds per day, that would mean 1 pound in the morning and 1 pound at night, and then you would feed it while you're milking. And you can buy a scoop that's basically about the size of a 1 pound coffee can, or use a 1 pound coffee can if you don't want to buy the scoop. And then early term pregnancy, they have less needs. So you could get by with, you could feed like a 1/2 pound in the morning, 1/2 pound at night. That's what I do to spread it out. And then you just figure out, you know, how many pounds you're gonna need based on how many goats that are either pregnant or lactating or not. And you shouldn't really need to feed that you buy from the feed store anyway. You shouldn't need to feed that to goats if they're not pregnant or lactating. And then that tells you how many bags, because the bag will weigh anywhere between 40 and 50 pounds depending on the brand.
Okay. So that can give you an idea of how much feed you need to budget for then. So when you know how much your product costs, you can kind of have an idea of where to set your prices. You need to make sure that you're making money on your investment, or you're not going to want to keep doing it. And price setting is one of the biggest struggles for farmers. And, you know, I know some farmers that don't keep track of their expenses or their costs, so they have no idea how much they have in it, and they just kind of go market pricing, which is they look at what everyone else is selling theirs for and sell it for that too, which that works, I guess, but you don't know if you're making any money that way.
Well, I'm not sure it works. I mean, farming industry's in a lot of trouble because the government sets a lot of the prices, and farmers don't really, you know, they have a lot of debt and they don't really know.
Right.
I know the farmers that I've been around recently said, you know, us guys, meaning the men, on average are making about $46,000 a year, but they're trying to service so much debt that it really costs them $52,000 to make that 46. So they're not getting ahead. They're falling behind, and that's happening all across the board. So I think the other challenge is in anything, just not farming, but any kind of business where you've got to set prices. I think it's pretty important to really decide, what did it cost me? What's the true cost of making this product and charging it? Because being cheap does not really necessarily get you a living, make you a living.
No.
So what does it cost when you set that price? What did it cost to have all of those things in place so you could produce that milk or produce that meat? That's why people want to buy a baby pig, and have it to market in 3 months because they can't afford to keep it. It costs so much.
Right.
And the pricing's so low.
So you have to make sure that you cover all your costs and have a return that'll make you want to keep farming. Otherwise, you're going to want to get out of it.
Or enable you to keep farming. You don't want to keep farming. But the bank doesn't care what you want to do. They want their money. So, and most people do have a lot of debt.
Yeah.
They got a mortgage, they owe on equipment, they may even owe on feed bill, insurance. I mean, it's expensive to do this work.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people, you know, what I do is very money intensive. I have to buy the chicks, I have to buy all the feed, I have to pay for the processing, all before it ever goes to the market. And if I don't have somebody to buy that product, and I'm not charging enough money to cover all that money that I've spent, then I'm basically paying people to eat my chicken.
Or you have a brother-in-law who drives, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. It was my brother-in-law. Yeah, I have lots of brothers-in-law. Yes, I do.
They help you out.
They have helped me out a lot, and they drive really wonky. So yes, that's what I was talking about. Okay, things can happen. That was my point. Things happen, and the universe does stuff to you that you cannot believe. So you better try to build a little bit of wiggle room in your budget for these kinds of
unexpected expenses.
Yeah. Like, you know, like we always say, if you have livestock, you'll have dead stock. So there you go. If you have live plants, you'll have dead plants. These are all good things to remember when you're budgeting. Would you say?
Right. Yes.
If I redeem myself?
Yes. Yes.
Once again, here we are. As Annie likes to say, I'm sitting right here. Women do hold up more than half the sky.
That's right.
So why aren't we claiming our power? Tell me, Carrie, why?
I don't know, because we're modest.
I don't know if we're modest. I think we lack confidence.
Yes.
And having a budget, believe it or not, it sounds goofy, but having a budget and knowing where we start and where we finish builds confidence. Because I was just saying this week, we're saying, you know, the economy seems to be struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And we know this because every Monday we have a little bit of a meeting, and Jay and I sit down and we look at where we are for the week and the next week, and we kind of play things out. And then once a month we have what we call a come to Jesus financial meeting, and we look at, you know, what the cash flow is and where we were last year and the year before at this time. And so we're able to really look at everything, and we're thinking, you know, we had a lot less students. We didn't make as much in some of our other endeavors on the farm. And what we came to find out, we also had less expenses. So we aren't going bankrupt.
Yay!
Because that's where you go with it, you know, you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to stop doing what I'm doing.
And you're able to have those meetings because you kept good records and.
Right, and it does build confidence, because now we're going, okay, we know where we've been, we know where we're going, and we know things have slowed down, so now we have to rework some things. And one thing we've done is to go back to some things we were doing before that seem to be timely right now and working again to make money for us. So without that budget though, we could just keep going until we don't have any money in the bank and we still have checks. Those checks just keep being there. That's right.
So the point of this is that not only as a woman are we responsible for our farm job, if we're the primary operator, we also have those other jobs that we do because we hold up more than half the world. Whether it's taking care of a family, you know, in the traditional sense of kids and husband, or, you know, my mom is living next to us right now, so I've got some responsibilities helping out with my mom right now. You know, that you help out your granddaughter and things like that, so.
Yeah, it's life, you know,
Right.
and women tend to be the deciders about a lot of things, and so we may be farmers, and we also may be the decision maker about a lot of things. We may have a job off farm. And I mean, that's the reality. And so how do we take care of ourselves so we can keep doing what we do, or we can get rid of that off farm job and really be the full-time farmer? Eventually our kids grow up, so that's good news.
Yes.
That's for a short time. But then where do we go from there? And that's the real value of talking about budgeting, I think, is it's about budgeting everything in life. It isn't just that number one, number two equals, you know, 15 or something, so.
Right, we need to budget our time. So,
Right.
Ways that we can do that, at the barn, we can save money by applying for fencing grants, and you have.
Through FACT,
Through
it's
FACT.
F period, C, A period, C period, T period. You can look them up online. So they have an annual grant that works with people, with farmers who are looking to create some fencing options for their livestock, and then would enable them to go after a humane certification. And they're a really great group to work with. I've done some webinars with them on setting the course. And I like them, they're great to work with, and the grant application is pretty simple and straightforward, and that's a good one.
Okay, Sarah has some grants. Another way to save time and actually money is by doing pasture rotations. The point of that is to keep your grass healthy so that you don't overgraze. We're still grazing right now, even though it's mid-November. So because we've done a good job of managing our pasture, we should still have grass for a few more weeks, and I can delay feeding some of that expensive hay.
Yeah, well, also pasture rotation is about parasite load.
True, yes.
And also just the soil, the whole thing of working the soil. And just to say in terms of the goat world is we are doing still a little bit of pasture, but you have to be careful with goats, because once some plants have been frostbit, that if that goat chews on that, that plant has become something different because it was altered from the freeze, and it can create a toxin buildup and bloat in the goat and actually kill it.
Oh, wow.
So you have to kind of really think about that a bit. So we're feeding hay. The bucks are over in another pasture where it seems to be okay, but we're feeding hay pretty heavy to kind of distract them from wanting to eat anything that's frostbit. It's a big issue for goats.
You can do soil testing. That's going to save you money on healthcare of your goats by feeding, having a good quality stand of grass for them to eat.
Also, it's going to help you with parasite control, and by knowing what, again, I know we talked about this before, but if you're going to do soil testing, you should use somebody like the Crop Services International versus the local extension office, because in my experience with local extension, they don't test for all the minerals, and really that's where the tweaking comes in. So we need to know what those what the components are of those minerals in that soil, because that's going to keep our animals healthier. It's going to change the diversity of the plant life in the in the pasture.
Mhm.
And enable some plants to grow that'll help us with parasite control, and is gonna increase the microbes in the soil, which changes plant life and helps with parasites.
Yeah.
And I know bison aren't as much in as much trouble as goats and sheep,
Right.
but parasites are big. I feel like in a decade, we may not have goats in this country if we can't do better with our soil and get some control over the parasite problems we have.
Okay, and another time-saving tip is to buy hay from somebody that does have good soil that's, tested and things like that. That's gonna save you time and money.
Yeah, they need to be able to tell you what the protein content is, and it's called TDN, thank you. And so you want to know what that is, and then also what the soil test told you, because it may look like, okay, it's got a lot of good protein in it, but if it doesn't have the right mixture of minerals and everything in the soil, you're practically starving the animal to death, even though they're eating a lot of it, and that's no good.
So time is money, but money can't buy time, and that's so true. We only get 24 hours in a day. So we have to figure out how to squeeze all of our obligations into that day. So we wanted to give you some tips about how to do that.
Also, we want to enjoy what we do, and when we're trying to do too much, which seems to be the case for so many people, it's like they're on a treadmill and speeding up. So one of the things that I like to do is that I actually have a monthly menu. And I get everybody to sit down, and it's week by week, and they have to share, because the hardest part about cooking is, what do we make? I'm sure everybody agrees with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do we make? So if we have a menu and everybody goes, I want to eat that tonight, could we switch with Thursday? Okay, no problem.
Right.
So it also helps with saving money at the store, or in terms of putting up food that you might can or freeze or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it saves time and everybody has bought in. So that's a really good thing. And they're like, yeah, I wanted to do that, and I'm gonna cook tonight. So at our house, if you cook, somebody else does the dishes.
That's a
it
good
should
trade.
be.
Yes.
And that's as it should be. And then also, with a menu, it's easy to assign tasks. So my mother-in-law used to say, all right, your vice president in charge of setting the table. Your vice president, she had a lot of kids, so
Yeah.
your vice president in charge of cleaning up the dishes. And I used to say, well, at the bank, everybody's the vice president and they're poorly paid. And she said, exactly, because I'm the president and I'm in charge. So, and then if you know what's on the menu, you can make one shopping trip and you can take care of everything at once. And then we try to do a plan so that we cook, say if we're going to have rice, so we'll cook extra rice and we can either freeze that for fast food, or we will plan that later on in the week for the menu. And so, that's the other challenge, is time, as you pointed out. And so nobody wants to stay in the kitchen all afternoon or all evening, especially if you've had a long day and you're the farmer.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that get me really going, is everybody sitting there waiting. The dogs, the cats, and the humans. What are we having? It's like, okay, well, maybe you're not having anything, but I'm gonna have something. So being grumpy, I don't want to be grumpy.
No, because we all want to have a little bit of time to enjoy ourselves too.
Yeah, and be with our families.
Right. So another way to save time is to create a chore list. When you know what needs done, you can save guesswork.
And we do this with our interns, because the things that drive me crazy are on the chore list.
Mm-hmm.
So I want the floor swept, and I want the sink in the shower room washed and the dishes done. And so let's say we have 4 interns. So every 4th day, you're going to do one of those jobs. And it's on the list. Nobody's mama works here.
Right.
And everybody does their own laundry. And it really does make a difference. It's not to say I'm still not, pushing myself hard sometimes, because we have a lot of visitors and we try to feed everybody when they're there. But it makes a difference, because then I'm not thinking I got to be responsible for everything. And then I start getting a little bit of resentment, because it's a 15-hour day and it's dark and I still have to finish the canning. And it's got to cook for 20 minutes. And then everybody's, watching a film. It's like, hey, wait a minute. where's the fairness in this? And they'll all say, well, there's nothing fair in life, which then really gets me going. So I think it's a matter, again, of good planning, good budgeting, of resources, really. That's what we're really talking about in this webinar, is budgeting resources.
Right.
Yep. And being nice to everybody.
Yes. So another thing I like to do, I keep everything on my phone because it's my brain that I keep in my pocket, and it's got cute little things that I can check things off, and
Oh, that's nice.
I like the satisfaction of crossing something off of a list or checking something off of a list. That's how I work. But so I have a list of things, like say it's raining or whatever, and I plan to do something else that day. I can look at my list of things that need to be done. They're not necessarily, things that are pressing or whatnot. They're just my list of things I'd like to get done. And so when I have unexpected free time, I can look at that list and say, oh, I could do this today, and then check that off the list. But you don't know if you don't have it written down.
No, and you also don't know what you have energy for. I do like this picture with the Post-it notes, because it, when we start our annual planning, it actually starts in June for the next year. Because we need to lay down a basic concept of where we're going, and then we build on that the rest of the year and sometimes into the next year. But I like the Post-it notes because, for example, I've worked this year on this SARE grant that has to do with specialty dairy, and I used Post-it notes to see where different concepts were and create a timeline with that on calendars. So because I'm old fashioned, I like to have a physical calendar, and I could put those Post-it notes, and then I could see where I was going in terms of time and resources. And not to say that everybody's going to do that, but I think, again, it just comes back to, how do I budget out that time and those resources in a way that shows me that I'm going to enjoy what I'm doing, I'm going to make a living, and I'm not going to resent the fact that I'm working harder than I want to. So those are the challenges. Oh, yeah. I have to say, this is really important. I know that one of the challenges we have as women, no matter how tall or how short or how fat or how thin or whatever the right words are for that, it's hard. The industry of work has not discovered that women are really workers.
Right.
We work hard, we get dirty, we don't want to have pink caps. We don't mind pink caps for other things or other women, but we want functioning shoes, we want functioning clothes, gloves that fit, clothes that fit, and I don't care where you go, it's almost impossible. Yesterday, I won't say where I was, but I was at a shop where I had to go take one of my interns, and they had children's leather gloves. I could almost have cried because they fit my hand. I'd never seen them before, but they were leather, and so I bought myself two different kinds, because I wear gloves because I wear a liner because the glove is always too big. So, and then one time somebody gave me these little thin gloves that are insulated, but they're very thin. They weren't proud. They didn't put the name on the manufacturer. And they are so great to wear inside of leather gloves because they keep your hand warm. But I never can find them.
Oh.
It's really sad. So this is the kind of searching we do. So a lot of us love this style of boot. So that's why it's sitting here. Because you can slip it on, you slip it off. Of course, if you're in the pig area, you can slip it off by accident.
In the pig area.
That's right. I've done it before. Oh, it's so gross. But if you don't buy quality, it's not going to perform for you. And so it's a tool. And I think it's really important to recognize that these are important tools. The clothes we wear that keep us safe, keep us warm, keep us cool, we got to invest in it.
Yeah.
We really do. And it puts us in jeopardy if we don't. So that's where we have to start, I think.
Plus, if you buy cheap crap, it's going to wear out faster, and you're going to have more waste. So we don't want to do that.
And we live in a world that's running out of everything. So we owe it to ourselves to do the right thing. Yep. And that's a milk pail, and like if you milk goats or whatever you do, you really have the same thing should apply to the products that you're going to use with your animals, because you need to have things that can be clean. I like stainless for milking and milk processing, because you can see it is clean.
Right.
And so you're not going to end up with somebody getting sick or the milk being ruined. But I think it applies across the board. I like those feeding dishes now. I use with my pigs and sometimes with my chickens that are made out of recycled tires.
Yes.
They don't split.
No.
They can be shoved around and dropped off the roof and, you know, they're not that expensive, but they last.
Right. If you have water in them and they freeze, you can step on the back of it and it'll pop right out.
That's right.
Without breaking.
That's right. I love that. And also they're right. You can buy the right size for a tire. So I have, for my pigs, I have a tire and I spray foam in it, and then that recycled tire dish sits right down in it.
Yes.
And I put warm water in the morning and it doesn't freeze until maybe 5 o'clock in the evening.
Plus they can't flip it 20 times a day.
No, they do like to push it sometimes, but they cannot flip it over.
Right.
I can't really move it myself, but they might help me. They might push it and then we help together. But yeah, so that's the thing, and that tire is really high quality, and then the thing inside of it's high quality, and you just can't go wrong. And also it's safer. In the long run, you're going to have spent less money by buying good equipment. Well, there you go. What are you going to say about that?
Well, you can always buy used items. I used to say I wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for Craigslist, because I've bought so much stuff off of Craigslist. I go to auctions and buy things that people bought new and then never used because, you know, they didn't plan ahead, they didn't budget, so they went out of business. So I buy it for a heck of a lot less than the new price.
Also bartering, because one time when I was in my Thanks for Nothing season, and one of my students dropped my camera and broke it, and I put something out there and you said, I got a camera, and I came over with some cookbooks to trade for the camera. So
yeah,
you looked at me like, what? And you said, I'll just take one. I'm like, no, you can have all of them. I'm so glad you have a camera. So
a possibility pile. Some people call that a junk pile, but
I mean, you have to have resources for fixing
Right.
things and creating fun things and art and all that stuff.
right,
Sure.
so, yeah. And then again, you have to be creative, learn how to do simple repairs on things. You know, you can't always afford to pay somebody to fix something, so you have to learn a few handy gal skills. And then invest in renewable energy. It would be a big savings for not only our environment, but your wallet as well.
Or even just learn more about passive solar and how to, you know, create situations where if you've got, say you've got a portable chicken tractor, or you've got other things you're moving around the field. Okay, so how do you orient that so that they're getting the maximum amount of warmth from the first sun in the morning and things like that. So educating yourself about what all this means with reduce, reuse, and repurpose, but also things like passive solar and thermal mass can save you a huge amount of money.
Your pig water with
That's right. It's using all of those concepts. Yep. And that comes back also to, we don't have this on here, but asking your neighbor, asking another woman. Lots of us know stuff, and we want to know what you know, and so that's super important. And I was thinking about also the idea of repairing things it's one of the things that we all need to know more about.
Right.
And I suggest maybe you talk to your local ACEnet group and say, hey, are you writing a grant? Why don't you write a grant about how to teach us how to weld and how to repair a simple gas engine? And, you know, we're out there, we want to know these things.
Right.
Yep.
So budgeting can bring balance to your life, and then you have a happy family, you have happy animals, and you have a happy farmer.
That's right. And isn't that the cutest little goat you ever saw?
It is.
That is Felix. Isn't he adorable?
Yes.
He doesn't look like that anymore. He's lots bigger. Yeah. But I think this is true, and this is really what we call the happiness factor. That is, if we try to work at balance, we don't always succeed.
Right.
But if we can try, we're going to come a lot closer to doing it. Then we have time to do things like show up and have webinar together.
That's right.
So we hope you'll join us next time. What are we doing next time, Carrie?
We are talking about mentoring. 10 ways to make Thrive your mantra.
Oh my God, I love that. Okay.